We here in Greenbelt are so excited to have two great men, two men I admire, join us tonight and read from their books. Very different books, but in some ways there's a theme too. So both these men are great activists in Greenbelt. You may know them from many different venues. So Frank DeBernardo is here with us, and he lives in Greenbelt, and he is the director of New Ways Ministry, which is a national organization, a Catholic organization that works for equity of gay, lesbian, transgender people. And that facility, that office is in Hyattsville. So some of his colleagues are here from that office. And Frank was the founder of Greenbelt Pride. I don't know how many years ago that was. So thank you, Frank. And a couple of years ago, the Greenbelt Museum interviewed him about that history, because it is part of our history. So our friend Chris Haley is here, and Chris, many people know from the Utopia Film Festival. Chris lives in Lanham, and he is
Landover,
excuse me.
But close. Close.
And he is from his 9-to-5 job. He is the director of the Maryland State Archives of the Legacy of Slavery program in Maryland.
Oh, cool.
And Chris usually makes a joke when he tells us what he does for a living, because of course it's not easy stuff to face. Some of us have gotten to see Chris performing. If you went to the Harriet Tubman Museum on the Eastern Shore, he is one of the reenactors in a play, in the film there.
Wow. Yep.
And
I forgot. I was like, what?
I forgot. No, I remember.
That's right.
Because I recognized you. I thought,
Right.
and so Chris is going to be reading from some of his poetry, which is being proud as a gay man, as a black man, as an activist man, about the intimacies of relationships and world issues. And Frank DeBernardo is going to be reading a book about someone, a very inspiring man, who none of us know, because we're not, well, maybe if you're from New York City you might have known him, but the name of the book is Mychal Judge, Take Me Where You Want Me to Go. And he was a priest who was an activist, who worked with diverse populations of homeless people, people with HIV/AIDS, people who were firefighters, all kinds of people. He knew the mayor, he knew the man who was sitting on the curb. He was such an inspiration, and he died. He was thought to be the first person at 9/11 to have died. So that's the book that Frank is going to be reading from. But Frank is a prolific writer, and so if you visit the website of the New Ways Ministry, there's lots of very interesting short and long articles about all kinds of issues. And he unfortunately was very busy last week because, as some of you know, the Roman Catholic Pope had a few things to say last week, and so Frank was pretty busy. So the plan is that we have a book table so you can buy books. We have a few refreshments. So I'm going to ask Frank and then Chris to read a little bit, and then maybe we'll have some more reading, or maybe we'll start talking. I also want to introduce Chris's brother, who Alan Haley, who is who drew some pieces that are in the third book that Chris is going to be. I don't know what books you're going to be reading. Alan is here.
Dick and Greenbelt.
And Alan also lives in
Landover.
Hawaii.
Landover, Hawaii.
Landover. All right. So Frank, please.
Okay. Well, thank you, Leanne, especially thank you for organizing this. As someone who does organizing, I know all the work that goes into something like this, and I really appreciate all the effort and time and even money that she put into this out of her own money. So I just want to be, I'm going to read two little passages from the book. Mychal Judge, it's subtitled Take Me Where You Want Me to Go, and I'll explain that a little later in one of the readings. But Mychal Judge was a priest, a Franciscan priest in New York City, and he came to prominence, he became public with his death at 9/11. His was probably the most famous photo from that sad tragedy of him being carried out, his body being carried out from the rubble by some firemen and policemen. It was called the modern pietà. But as Leanne said, he was involved in so much of the fabric of the life of New York City. He ministered to lesbian and gay people. He ministered to the homeless, to people with AIDS, and he was the chaplain of the New York City Fire Department, which is why he was in the World Trade Center on 9/11. He died while he was ministering to the first responders and the other victims in the building. I just want to say a few words about how this book came to be. I work at New Ways Ministry, and we work on Catholic LGBTQ issues, and one day I got a phone call from a publisher, a Catholic publisher called Liturgical Press. They're one of the big Catholic publishers in the country. And I've been doing this work for 30 years, and we often did not get recognized by Catholic publishers. So to have one call, and he said, "We want you to write a biography of Father Mychal Judge." I forgot to say, Father Mychal Judge also was gay, and that fact came out publicly after his death. Although many of his friends knew that he was gay while he was alive. But they said to me, we'd like you to write his biography. And I said, I can't write his biography. I said, I didn't know him. I don't know much about him. And I said, and by the way, if I did write it, I would have to deal with the fact that he was gay. Because of the position that I have, I would have to deal with that fact. And the publisher said, that's exactly why we wanted you to write the book. So it was really a great moment in Catholic publishing that they would seek out a book about a gay priest. So I'm going to read two short passages here. And one is from his journal or about his journal that he kept for a few years in 1999, a few years before he died. One of his gay friends encouraged him to keep a journal to write about his sexual identity openly. And it was a short-lived exercise, lasting only about a few months. But it went for about 57 pages. And I want to read one of the passages from that, from the book that describes the journal. As previously noted, Judge began the diary with some self-identification that he wrote on the inside cover. This is what he wrote. Some mother's son, 230 Dean Street, his boyhood address. Irish, Catholic, Democrat, priest, gay, and more. No one ever asked me. The entries that followed chronicled his struggle with being private about his sexuality. Part of that struggle was due to the fact that he genuinely accepted the gift of sexuality and his own sexuality in particular. He wanted the freedom to share that reality with others. He wrote, I thought of my gay self and how the people I meet never get to know me fully. And why? Because it is not acceptable. No one, absolutely no one, lives two full as separate lives as I do. Little wonder I am so tired at day's end. Judge had learned to appreciate his sexual feelings and was grateful to God for them, even though he was aware that the church often sent disapproving messages about his sexual attractions. And then this is his a little longer passage. 1,000 thoughts and desires run through my mind at everybody I see, he wrote. But only for a moment. Drives, desires, passions, energy, excitement, yearning, and all the rest. I see the beauty, how God created it, and how, in a sense, the church scorns our dwelling on it, sexual, sinful, hand in hand. But they are not connected at all, sexual and sinful. I love, I applaud the beauty of God's handiwork. Sexually, I am alive as I can be. The thoughts, the drives, the desires are there always. And you, Lord, are always there, and you so nicely remind me to call on you and show me your presence. I love you, God. So that was, I think that line, I am alive as I can be, is one of the, I mention that line when I give workshops or talks to say it's the antidote to sexual shame, to say I am alive as I can be. This next passage is much shorter, and it's from the chapter about his ministry to people with HIV/AIDS. He formed in the 1980s the first Catholic ministry to people with HIV/AIDS in New York City, around 1987, I believe. And this is a little passage that I found very moving when I had researched the book. As the pandemic spread and public apathy still remaining as high as public fear, Judge's work began to multiply. His appointment book was filled with hospital visits and funerals. He organized AIDS retreats, attended workshops and support groups, and continued using his personal charm to raise funds for patients' necessities, as well as raising awareness among the influential people in the city that he knew. Judge innovated when necessity demanded it. He infused his anointing oils with street-bought essential oils to make the sacramental experience more fragrant for those who near death were fading in consciousness. Breaking out into song was a regular activity if the pastoral visit seemed to call for one. One night, he received a call at the friary from someone looking for, quote, the priest who does AIDS funerals. The man was named Larry Bowies. He was providing full-time care for his partner of 18 years, Ron Dolto, who was rapidly approaching death. Though estranged from the church because of the way gay people and AIDS patients had been shunned, Dolto's faith in a loving God was strong, and he longed for the sacrament of anointing. He greatly doubted, however, that any priest would perform the rite for him. Judge arrived at the couple's home in a midtown loft, finding Dolto lethargic, a living skeleton, propped up in a wheelchair. Judge grabbed his hand, and the priest's smile ignited instant rapport with the dying man. He heard Dolto's confession, administered the sacrament of anointing, and gave him a fragment of a communion post, which was all the sick man had the strength to ingest. Judge closed the impromptu prayer service with a most impromptu act. He lifted Dolto's fragile body out of the wheelchair and cradled him in his arms like a child, singing soft songs to him and ending with a kiss on his forehead. Mary Laney, a friend of the couple's who had witnessed this event, described it as, quote, about as close to a mystical experience as you could ever have. Less than a week later, Judge led the graveside service at Dolto's funeral. The priest reassured the man's parents that they had raised their son with sound principles and virtues, most evident by the love he shared with Larry Bowies, his partner. He urged them to take pride in their son's faith, as well as in the courage he showed by enduring such a harrowing trauma. Mary Laney, who again was there, commented on how important it was for Dolto's parents to hear such messages. She said, "This is the first priest I've ever heard tell the parents of a gay boy that you should be proud of him." Thank you.
Thank you very much, Frank. That was very, very moving. I had not read that before. That sort of puts me in a different mindset of what I'm going to read first. I had 10 things ready to read for you. 10 things. So I'm just going to read them really fast. No. So these books are 3 books, and there's like 3 others that are sitting there waiting to come out either through me or through a publisher, are a journey of my life. And as I was interviewed by, well, actually I was reviewed by someone who has their own online service, which is, she has a blog where she interviews people who do poetry, who do writings and things of that sort. And so she interviewed this second book, which is called Until the Right One Comes Along, which is really because it's, as far as coming out goes, I don't know I ever really felt that I had the need to come out. So when I read these books, it was like, if you read them, it's all out there. It's like, it's all, hello. Like, I just give this to people and say, I have a letter I'm going to write you. But if you read this book, it's right there. But she said it's not so much poems. She said it's like poemoirs, which I never heard that term before. But it's like poetry that, because it sometimes mixes verse and it mixes rhyme, it's like a poemoir because it's a memoir in verse. And so that's what all of these are. That's what I go to if they don't really rhyme too much. That's what I sit in. But considering what Frank just read, I'm going to start with one of these poems from Fists and Rainbows, which is my most recent work, which, as you might guess, Fists is because within the last, I'd say, several years, I have felt especially moved and drawn and I guess stimulated by the attacks against the LGBTQ and the black community as far as civil justice and social justice. I truly think that's going crazy, and so that's why it's Fists and Rainbows. The first part is really called With One Fist in the Air, and that's from the fist point of view, and Holla is about being an LGBTQ person. It's almost like a part 2 of Until the Right One Comes Along. Obsessions was what I wrote 20-some years ago when I'd written so many different things, and I finally thought, there's enough of these to be a book. If nobody else is going to publish them, I'll do it myself. And I did! So this first one that I'm going to read from Fists and Rainbows was published by The Hill Rag out of Washington, D.C. And I wasn't even going to read it at first, but then when I was checking some of the things that I had out there, because when you write so much, you sort of forget what you have out there. And the lady who did a review, who was the editor for that Hill Rack, she picked it. And I thought, well, gosh, if somebody who's very unbiased picked it, then maybe I should go with that first. So that's what I'm going to do. It's called Jesus Had a Name for You. Government, stay out of my business. Tell others what to do. Does that declaration ring odd to you? Tell others what they shouldn't do? Don't get married to the same sex. Decide which women's rights we should respect. Keep our Second Amendment. Keep our freedom from another's independence. Build a mile-high fence. Rail against others who kneel for equality, when it was the founders' violence which burned King George in effigy, and the destruction of bags of New England tea which sparked this land of liberty. How you shamelessly claim this pious disdain. I know you hate education and CRT, but the ignorance of your actions, the deafness to your words, Jesus Christ, literally stuns me. That's Jesus Has a Name for You. The other one is from the first book that I wrote, and this is written in 1998, which means it was some of the things that preceded 1998. Now, some of you may remember that during, say, the mid-90s, there was this big thing that was going on, which still has resonance in America today, and one could say it's something that's even reflective of today, except it's not pinpointed to one person. And that's because a certain huge, iconic athletic star had been accused of a very heinous, awful, tragic act. And so this poem is called Glut. 9 books on the shelf, more throughout the stacks, carrying different titles, various slanted views. I wondered why the shelf didn't have its own sign, like the other literary genres: fiction, nonfiction, romance, mystery, OJ. Of course, it wasn't necessary. Do you remember where you were when you first heard the news and it was just a passing story? Do you recall when the story was small? I was driving home from work. It was sunny. It was June. Something about OJ's ex-wife murdered. The TV screen showed him in handcuffs. I thought how awful. They wouldn't have done that to a white guy. Take him off. And they did. He was in Chicago after all. Oh, he was in LA when it happened. The story had grown tall. Our parents remember JFK and where they were that fatal day. I was home from work, but by my set I stayed. I watched the Ford Bronco crawl away. How surreal it was. Will we see his head explode? The Zapruder tape had nothing on this. Worldwide coverage on an open road. But where were you when the verdict was read? The first verdict. The president spoke over the second. I was in a mixed crowd. We find the defendant not guilty. A white woman said, he got away with it. A black man said, he ought to sue everybody. Black me, who thought he did it, said nothing. So what do you think of knit caps now? Gloves, golf clubs, lawyers, police, judges, media, Bruno Mali, those ugly ass shoes. Can we revisit the sports hero and the common man? OJ is 1 for 2. Joe Blow would have gone 0. The richness of his class saved him. The vengeance of his class brought him back to the people he appealed to, the black poor. Book after book after book on one man, by authors, acquaintances, detectives, lawyers, girlfriends, jurors, and more, digging a hole we all sank into, wallowing in a glut of misery, a pool of pain and blood that, thankful it wasn't ours, but too engrossed to let it go. Let go, America. Let go. Glad. And this is from the book which basically was my coming out story to all those who didn't know. Boy, Chris, that's a really interesting book. So this one is called Queasy. I see you. I go queasy. It's embarrassing, but it's true. The sight of you in my presence and my senses melt to goo. The compliments I feel inside me, which mirror the thoughts I think of you, stumble through my lips, tripped by nerves and indecision. Each time I try a few. Even now, after we've spoken, you know a little about me, I know a morsel about you. I stutter at new conversation, which might reveal a future in my rapt pursuit of you. I realize it's not love. I know I don't know you that well. But it's amazing how this infatuation makes me ponder you so deeply, like I might a lover of several years. It's only, hi, how are you? How's it going tonight? Nothing new. Make any money? You're so cute. You're sweet. And enduring the anxiety which lets me go no further. So all I do is write about you. Convince myself that these small exchanges somehow mean more. But isn't it great to know, if you know, that you make someone queasy?
So I propose we have a little more reading and then the conversation, right? Yeah.
Joke. Let's see what I'll give you this time.
So both of these books were published last year, the Fists. It has quite a complicated title, I keep forgetting it. Fists and Rainbows with One Fist in the Air and Holla. Both of these books were published last year, and on two different publishing places, they became bestsellers. So within their circles of people. So we're very proud to have these great authors.
And there's room to sell more, as you can see.
I'm going to read you a passage that I think sums up his what he learned from the firefighters. That was the original title of this the chapter about his work as a chaplain. And one of the things the book covers is the variety of spiritual influences he had. He grew up in a very Irish family and neighborhood. He became a Franciscan. He went to AA. He came out as a gay man. And then he started working with the fire department. And that added a whole nother layer of spirituality to his life. So this is a little passage from that chapter on firefighters, and it concludes with the last public words he gave. The firefighters' near constant awareness of life and death often inspires them to ask the big, ultimate questions about existence and eternity more than other people do. Firefighters always put others' lives and safety before their own. They trust and rely on one another as deeply as police officers and military personnel do. And because they are ready for this life of service every day, this faith in each other becomes background for them, something not necessary to talk about, but simply to live. Though firefighters may be the last to admit it, firefighting has a sacred dimension to it. Father Judge would say, firefighters ask me to bless them, but I feel blessed by them. Far from being a ministerial cliche, this sentiment expressed the fact that as he lived among the firefighters, Judge was experiencing a new kind of spirituality that was more based in actions than ideas or words. On one occasion, he told the firefighters, "The firehouse is a holy place. It will always be holy ground for you." On September 10th, 2001, Mychal Judge preached at a mass celebrating the rededication of a newly renovated Bronx firehouse in what would be his last sermon. He looked toward the future, whatever it would hold. He said, "We come to this house this morning to celebrate renewal, rejuvenation, new life. We come to thank God for the blessings, for all the years that the good work has been done here. We can never thank God enough for the reality of the lives we have. So standing in God's presence this morning, and truly this is a chapel, let us pause for a moment, perhaps close our eyes, and thank God for some special blessing in our individual lives. You do what God has called you to do. You go out to do the job, which is a mystery and a surprise. No matter how big the call, no matter how small, you have no idea what God's calling you to. But God needs you. God needs me. God needs all of us. Work together. And from this house, God's blessings go forth to this community. It's fantastic, but very painful. We love the job we all do. What a blessing that is. A difficult, difficult job. And God calls you to it, and indeed, He gives you a love for it, so that a difficult job will be done, and well done. Isn't God wonderful? Isn't God good to you, to each one of you, to me? Turn to God each day. Put your faith and your trust and your hope and your life in God's hands, and God will take care of you, and you will have a good life. Judge concluded that Mass by leading the congregation in singing "God Bless America." Amen. Without knowing the tragedy that the next day held, Mychal Judge was ready for it.
Okay. Because of all that you've read, I've decided to read this. This is from, again, from Until the Right One Comes Along. Because wherever you are, whoever you are, that there are some things that it's not easy to just say, "Here I am, accept me." You often go through a period of acceptance yourself, and then revelation. Maybe it's revelation first, then it's acceptance, and then it's the reveal to others. And so that's, in addition to this book, there were levels earlier in my life which took me through this. And so this is called If I Had an Alternative. And at first that was going to be the name of this book. And now I am a sinner, or so a friend declares me to be. He is born again. I am gay. Condemned, he says to me. The second time this friend has refused my being. But softer and gentler now, more humane than the first. At one with Christ in the Bible, he cannot be at peace with me. Phone calls are all right. If I am in need, stalled on the side of the road, he is allowed to help. But socialize? No. Condone it? No. Or he would be a sinner too. Today, the church allows him charity, the kindness I have shown him, he can show me to a degree. Before he was set to cast me aside completely, before his newfound Christianity. Yesterday, the church agreed that he show me none. Today, there is a window. No, perhaps a fence. He may speak to me through, from behind which he can touch me. Thus the holy view will not seem too unholy. I tell my friend of 11 years, that I believe in God too, the God who made me gay, who made him straight the same way. From man and woman should I believe he made me a sinner, an abomination against himself? Why? A test? I struggled through years of self-denial, recrimination, regret, fear, disillusion, refusing to accept myself, but never hate. Because somewhere, deep, deep, deep inside, I thought he decided this. Somehow it must be right. Still, I was chaste, celibate because of my insecurity, shy of both sexes, seeking a positive sign, emotion, desire, opportunity to explore uninhibited lust, that I might know all through this abnormal, unnatural time of stunted sexual growth, I was good. As good as I could be, if being with no one was good. My respect for truth, for pure honesty that kept me lonely, led me to that day when I admitted to myself it would be a lie. It would be a sin to take a woman where I had been born to desire a man. If gay is wrong, if God created this test for me, and millions of others since time began, then time again will let me realize this. Not the threats or condemnations of scared, closed-minded others, and time will bless my soul with acceptance. To allow mortal pressure to force me to change, after the agony of years of denial, after embracing a courage of self-acceptance, I fear a religiously dictated reversal would clap me in a tower again, a tower of my own secret shame that I was ever this thing. I will not lie. I will not rescind. I asked, I begged, I cried, God, why have you given me this pain? But if the pain overcoming being gay, is the pain overcoming being gay or struggling to accept it? What I will demand of my God, what I will give myself, is the right to respect my own honesty. I believe truth is what he would want me to be.
Thank you.
Frank, you were going to explain about the prayer, the title.
Oh, yes. The subtitle is Take Me Where You Want Me to Go. And Mychal Judge had developed a little prayer that's become known as Mychal's Prayer that he had written. It was just a very simple 3 or 4 line prayer. And Mychal had a wonderful Irish sense of humor that was very self-deprecating, and you'll hear it in the prayer. His prayer was, Lord, take me where you want me to go. Let me meet who you want me to meet. Let me say what you want me to say, and keep me out of your way.
Please, if you have a question or a comment, stand up and.
A question. I was trying to explain about Frank's book today as I was leaving work, and I wasn't sure. Did people know that Father Judge was gay when he was alive and around New York? I mean, is it generally known, or was it only after he died?
it only became public knowledge after he died, but there were people who knew. And he was very, he had a lot of very good friends, both within the friars and outside of the friars, who knew he was gay. I interviewed someone who said who worked with him in the AIDS ministry, and he said he never told the gay men who had HIV/AIDS that he ministered to. He never said to them, "I am gay too." But he would, and if you were growing up gay in the 80s and 90s, and maybe even today, people still do this. There's a coded language that's used. A sort of wink and a nod, or a turn of a phrase that sort of lets people know, well, we're both gay. And the man that I interviewed for the book, who worked very closely with Father Judge, said that he did that all the time. There's a thing where he was walking down the street, and they with a group of friends, and they passed a group of men who were very muscular and very fit, and he just said out loud, "God makes such beauty in this world." So, again, he didn't say I'm gay, but...
Chris, I have a question. So was poetry one of the ways that you came out? Was it a vehicle, or?
I would say no. I guess officially, unofficially, yes, because of the second book. But the first book, that was Obsessions, was more about just obsessions with myself, like how I looked, my career, was I going to be a successful actor or not? Obsessed with getting older and not being successful yet, and then the different things that were happening. There's a poem I wrote about Ali, because this is around the time of the Olympics, when he was carried the torch, and I think it was the first time people knew he had Parkinson's, and it was shaking, and I wrote about how different that was for me, because I'd grown up idolizing him, and of course saying float like a butterfly, sting like a bee, and one of my lines is that if only, I'm sure in his mind he still can do that, and the respect we give him is because we respect that he used to do that, and we imagine him doing that. So really, and at that point, the poems I wrote about being in love or being with somebody were gender neutral. I mean, it was just like them, they, it, of, us, and things like that. So it really wasn't until this book when I just put it all out there. So, but since I was in theater, everybody in theater knew, because in the theater world in general, you really, it's almost assumed that you're at least gay friendly if you're not gay yourself. So that was there, but I had such a dual life because my other life is so much in the history field. And in the history field, it just wasn't spoken about much, although I have found since then that several of the, I'd say the major black historians are gay, but it's just not what we talk about, because the main thing is about black civil rights and black equality and black social justice. So it's almost like you fight one battle at a time. And so that's what that approach is. Or has been for me.
Do you remember your uncle, famous uncle, Alex Haley?
I do. Now, when I was growing up, when we were growing up, my brother and I were growing up, he wasn't as famous as he became. So he would just come by, and he would always be, or often, be talking at the Library of Congress or the National Archives about this book he was writing. And again, we were so young that he's writing a book, but it meant nothing to us, because we didn't know what it was about. And certainly when you're single digits, single digits, people don't talk to you about family history. They don't talk, because you don't care. You're outside playing. So I knew him. He was great to us. He would give us $10 bills. This is a story I've told many times. And so we thought we were rich. We knew that he used to write, or he did interviews for Playboy magazine. So we knew that. We knew that. Not that we ever read it. But we knew he did that. Yeah. And I saw him a couple of times before he died. I saw him too. It was wonderful. It really was. Yeah.
Frank, I have two questions for you. After Father Judge died, was there, and it came out that he was a gay man, was there a reaction by firefighters, or what was the reaction? I would imagine it would have been varied. And then
Yeah.
secondly, is there an order which is more open and loving
Religious
and
order.
caring, a religious order
Yeah.
towards LGBTQ folks and others?
To answer the first question, I'll just give it, 9/11 happened. Mychal Judge's funeral was, I think, the 15th of September. 2 weeks after that, the Lesbian Gay Community Center in New York City, which is a very big institution, very important institution in the gay community, a very historic one, had a memorial service for the gay and lesbian people who died in 9/11. And someone submitted Father Judge's name to that. And a Village Voice reporter wrote down all the names, and that's how it got publicized. There was a lot of Catholic backlash against it. This book, I think it has 9 chapters. Let me see. No, 8 chapters. It was supposed to have 7. Okay, and the 7th chapter that's there now is 9. It's called 9/11. It's everything that happened on 9/11. And the 8th chapter, we decided, the editor and I, to do afterwards, and it's the title of that 8th chapter is that line, I am alive as I can be, because he had sort of this afterlife, after he died, where he became so well known and became known as this gay icon, or became a gay icon. So the controversy was within Catholic circles. The firefighters had no problem, for the most part. Any of them who spoke publicly had no problem. There was one who said, well, if you tell me he's gay, then I have to say he was my first gay friend. So there was, and I just met, in September, I went up to a parish in Syracuse, New York, a Catholic parish called All Saints, where they have the only shrine to Mychal Judge, and it's a statue that the parish commissioned of that image of the 4 men carrying his body out. And I met one of the firefighters there, and I asked him, I said, did you know before he died that he was gay? He said, well, we kind of knew, but, he was fun to be with, and he was a regular guy, and, I think in the fire department, he really couldn't be out because of what I would call, the mostly homosocial environment, where men living together and eating together and bunking in, in the same building and stuff, that it might have made it awkward for him. So, and he spent a lot of his time just visiting firehouses. The other question, there are religious orders who do take gay men openly. They've been taking gay men for years, maybe not so openly, but I wouldn't say there's one more than any other.
Yes?
Frank, has the cause of his canonization been introduced? If so, how's it going?
That's a good question. Basically, the question is there a movement to have him named a saint, canonized the saint? It's a very long, arduous process in the Catholic Church that takes many years and lots of research, which requires lots of money. We were in, this is another funny story. One day I'm sitting in my office, and I get an email from someone who says, "Hi, I'm Father Escalante. I'm calling from the Vatican." And I'm like, whoa. The Vatican's calling us. And he works for the office that reviews the research for sainthood. And he wanted to make Father Judge a saint. But the problem has been to find a group that will raise the funds to hire people to do the years of research that's required. That's why, if you ever look or hear of Catholic saints, they're all priests and nuns and bishops and popes. It's because those communities are the ones who fund the research. Okay? Father Judge's community does not want him named a saint, and so they are not. They will not fund the research. So.
Yes,
Any
sir.
questions?
So, I was raised in South Philadelphia with a Catholic family. My mother was Catholic, my grandmother was Catholic, whatever. So, my brother, we had three brothers. Me, my younger brother, my older brother. My older brother was molested by the family members, whatever. He turned out to be, I guess, homosexual. I don't know what, you're born that way, I don't know what happens. I love my brother, okay, you got me?
Yeah.
I do. And I found out he loves, he's bisexual, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And then one night I come over to the house and I'm from South Philly, I beat the guy up, and I beat the guy up. I was upset, but I love him the same. But my question is it morally right to have another guy with another guy and be wrong because I love him to death and I learned that I like the guy that I beat up.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like the guy.
He stuck around.
He stuck around. No way. I don't know why he did. I beat him up. I beat him up, but he stuck around. My brother loved him, so should I feel sad or upset, or
Yeah.
should
I think.
feel happy?
I think that whether you decide, how you decide if it's morally right.
Morally, I believe. When I grew up in South Philly. I grew up man, woman, man, woman, and
Right.
But my brother,
Right. And what a lot of people are saying now, and what some of the scientific research shows, is that historically we've had a bias against people who love someone from the same gender.
yeah.
But that these people have been present in society from time immemorial, that it is a natural variant of sexuality, but that morally, the moral institutions have built laws against them, thinking that it was unnatural. but now the scientific community, psychologists, doctors, the medical community has started to recognize, or has recognized, that it is a normal natural variant.
I recognize that now.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
saying then, it was a couple years ago.
Yeah, and that's what you know. We all have done things that we may regret in the past. You know, who hasn't regretted something?
Chris, do you have a comment?
And I understand that.
Let's ask,
Yeah.
Chris is
So
gonna
am I-
make a
am I-
comment.
Does that make me a bad guy?
Well, I was just wondering, did you beat him up because he was gay, or did he root for a different team? Because I see that you're Philadelphia Eagles, and now you're going to the Super Bowl. If he was a Cowboys or Giants,
I'm tell you what happened.
I'm just saying.
I come in the house. He's in the house with my brother. And visually, you don't want to understand the visual, what I seen. And what I seen was a little bit for me. You got me? So I took a baseball bat. Shot Philly.
Well, I would say this: would it be wrong to beat up someone, a straight person, to beat up a straight person? Is that morally wrong?
That was
And
then. Now I wouldn't do that.
I know. I'm just saying, but that in and of itself is wrong.
Yeah.
I would say beating up another person for any reason is wrong. So beating up a person because they're gay.
I was young. It was a lot of years ago, and you know.
Okay, there's a gentleman
I couldn't accept
behind
that.
you that wants to make a comment.
I could accept that.
I was in a relationship in high school with somebody.
I accept it now, though.
His brother had a similar issue with me.
Yeah.
So I was basically, I was in the
Oh.
I was thankfully part of the millennial group, and instead of actually being in conflict with me, he messaged me on Facebook and threatened to kill me. But that was it. And like, basically, and it's just because it was like, he's his older brother. It was like,
It was 15 years ago, and I accepted that.
very much like, very prominent family. So it was just like, he just didn't know how to become
Didn't know how to.
the actual, like, less so acceptance and this acknowledgement.
Thank you. Chris's brother Alan has some beautiful drawings in
Right.
Chris's latest book. So obviously they have a good relationship.
Yeah.
Where did your drawings come from? Were they inspired by something, or?
Well, Chris was giving me some ideas about things that, we were kids. We were going to Georgia to see our relatives, our grandparents and stuff. And then he pointed out that he saw a sign of a Klansman on a white horse, like raising up in front of a small child. And I guess I didn't look because I said, you mean they had one of those billboards that's like 30 by 40 feet and has a man with a white hood, horse in white, with the typical Red Cross rising up in front of a child. And I said, I don't think I remember that, but Chris, you clearly remember that. So I went to my old friend Google and looked for pictures like that, and yes, even in Google you can find those. That's life. But we're up there, and I saw it. I've been drawing for a while, and I put the pictures there and stuff. But no, I'm thinking we're getting better. We're not the same that we were 60 years ago, where things like that was not acceptable, but almost like forced on you. Say, you got to accept this. I said, why? We're not going to accept it. So we just rose the ideas together, what to do, drawing pictures about images you talk about, and I draw. I mean, sometimes up at night, 2 in the morning, I'm still drawing. That's why Chris said, turn the light out.
Well, thank you, folks, for a wonderful evening. So we have lots more books here and some cheese. And I think that Frank and Chris will come back down here, and if you have a book you want them to sign. So thank you so much.
Yeah.